This is a video to show you the techniques to suction filtration and the drying of solid compounds. Here you see a suction filtration system. We will need a filter flask and you have to clamp it tightly on a retort stand, so that later on when we apply the suction, the flask will not topple. That's why we have to emphasize the need to clamp the filter flask on the retort stand tightly. This is a Buchner funnel and we will need a rubber adapter to fit it into the filter flask. Insert the rubber adapter and secure the Buchner funnel by gently pressing it down. You may choose to use one or two pieces of filter paper. Using one filter paper will give a faster filtration process, but finer solids may pass through. Using two filter papers filters the solids more stringently. The drawback is that the process may be much slower. You may wish to use one filter paper first, and if solids are observed in the filtrate, repeat the filtration, this time using two filter papers. If your sample contains a lot of solid, using two pieces of filter paper can retard the filtration. The filter paper should not be significantly smaller than the Buchner funnel, nor should it be too big. The filter paper has to fit nicely into the area of the Buchner funnel. That's what's the most important. There is an individual vacuum line in every fume hood. All you have to do is just rotate the knob. You can test the vacuum using a thumb. For the vacuum line, we use a thick wall rubber tubing. And for gases and water, we apply the thinner wall rubber tubing. Isn't this similar to the artery and the veins in our body? Now it's action time. Connect the rubber tubing into the filtration flask by using a back and forth twisting action. First, wet the filter paper with the appropriate solvent. Turn on the vacuum. The partial vacuum or suction action will make the filter paper stick firmly onto the filter funnel. Now you observe that the suction is working and the water is flowing through as the filtrate. We have a suspension of a solid compound where the solvent is water, and we wish to isolate the solid compound. With a simultaneous stirring and pouring process, transfer the solids over. Most of the solids can be transferred with one single action. Use a glass rod spatula to transfer the remaining solid. There are still some solid remaining. Use more solvent to rinse and help to transfer the compound fully. Use minimum amount of solvent or co-solvent to wash the residue solid into the Buchner funnel. In this case, the compound is not very soluble in water. That's why we can use a bit more. Loosen the solid, spread it all out to ensure a better filtration and the suction of your solvent. To conduct an effective rinsing, first turn off the vacuum line and add solvents to the funnel. This will allow time for the impurities to dissolve effectively. Stir the solution a bit. and turn on the vacuum again. Make sure that the compound is dry. You can repeat the rinsing as many times until the compound is clean and pure. Under the suction, the filtrate will be collected quickly into the filtration flask. So in most cases, we leave the compound at the suction line for about 5 to 10 minutes, or even longer if we need our compounds to be air dried. In the teaching lab, if our compound has a high melting point, we will dry under the IR lamp. It is more effective and quicker for drying. The IR lamp is quite hot, so if your compound has a low melting point, about 70 to 80 degrees Celsius, it is not advisable to dry under the IR lamp because the compound may melt. For such low melting compounds, it is better to leave them at the vacuum line so that they can be completely dry. Transfer the solid samples onto a bigger piece of filter paper. Remember, there are a lot of students in the lab, so please label your filter paper with your name or initial and your film hood number. Place the sample under an infrared lamp to dry. Take note, the sample must be at least 20 cm away from the lamp. Put the sample under the IR lamp. Normally it takes about 15 minutes for the compounds to completely dry. There's one thing we can do to check whether our compound is dry. So take a bit of the sample and transfer it to a new filter paper and press hard in between. And when you open the filter paper, observe if there are any wet spots around the compound. If there isn't, it's completely dry. So here we have a very dry compound. And at this point, it would be good for us to use this sample to conduct a melting point test, since our compound is dry. After this is done, transfer your sample into a new plastic bag, and then seal it, and you're done.